Thank you all for coming tonight. This crowd keeps continuing to amaze us. I think this is our 6th consecutive sellout. Thank you very, very much. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Trip Anderson. I'm the executive director here at AVA Gallery and Art Center. I've been on the job almost exactly a year. So this is becoming old hat. We love having you here. We welcome you here. Thank you for coming on such a cold night, but I think we're going to have a very warm room and a lot of fun stories. Thank you, Pawn, if you can hear me, for the wonderful, wonderful food. Did everybody enjoy? And certainly thank you to AVA's staff, who turned this room over in less than an hour from being a holiday show gallery space into a storytelling theater. Thank you, AVA's staff. And thank you to all our storytellers, who you will hear much from tonight, and the reason you're all here. But thank you also to the committee that recruits, selects, auditions, coaches, the storytellers that we're going to hear tonight. I hear from them that it's a pretty extraordinary lineup. I won't oversell it, but I'll let them speak for themselves. Thank you, Cheryl, Judith, Mike, Sally, and Leanne for all the work you do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn things over to Judith. We have stories in kind of 2 stages, 2 sessions here. We'll have an intermission between. And Judith is going to introduce our first series of storytellers. Thank you all. Thank you, Judith. Have a fun time.
Thank you, Trip. It's so good to see you all here. Thank you for coming. And what we really hope is that we will inspire all of you to start this tradition of storytelling. Do it at home with your friends. And actually today we're doing something a little bit different because one of our storytellers dropped out at the last moment. So now we have an opening in our program tonight. And we want to solicit a story from the audience. I actually put on my hat thinking I was going to pass it around and invite you to put in your name. But we don't need the hat because we have a basket out there at the table. So if during the course of the evening you start feeling inspired and you remember a story of your own, please put in your name in the basket and we will draw a name. Yes, there it is. The baskets, please. And at intermission, after intermission, we will draw a name from the basket and invite someone from the audience to tell a story up here. And don't be intimidated, because we're all incredibly nervous when we tell our stories. It looks easy, maybe, but we are all shaking inside. So that's completely normal. That's part of the process. And let's just start with our first storyteller. Now, and actually, I have to say that the stories you're hearing tonight have been rehearsed. So don't be intimidated by that either. These people have already practiced their story. We do not expect perfection when you just tell an impromptu story. So please, please. Don't hesitate. Do submit your name. So let's welcome our first storyteller tonight, Britta Greene, who is a reporter for NHPR, where she tells stories daily on the radio. You may have heard her voice if you listen to NHPR today. A story about a ski shop in Lebanon, someone who bought, anyway, I actually did not hear the story, but I'm gonna find it. Please welcome Britta with a story about she just moved to the Upper Valley, and this is a story about settling in her new neighborhood. Welcome.
Can you hear me okay? Oh, whoa, okay. So, yeah, I just moved here from Minneapolis, where the weather is like today, but like for 3 months on end. So I got a little excited today and wore like every layer I own on both levels. So if I start sweating profusely, it's not because I'm nervous. It's just I'm really hot. Another thing you should know about me is that like I'm a pretty anxious person. Usually when I leave the house, I leave the house, I lock the door, then I go to my car, then I'm like, oh, I should go back and check the stove. And so I go back and check the stove, and then I come out, and then I do that like 3 more times just to make sure the house hasn't burnt down or won't burn down. Or like if I get on an airplane, it's like, oh, this airplane's probably like 40% more likely to crash than any other airplane, you know? So I moved here, and it's really the most rural area I've ever lived. Like it's really freaking dark at night here, and also it's the first time that I'm living alone. So I live in a 1-bedroom apartment on the 1st floor. So I was pretty sure, like within the first couple nights that I was here, that I was going to get murdered in my bed. But that didn't happen. Actually, it didn't happen for a while, and like these weeks were going by and nothing was happening, and then about 2 months after I moved here, I got home and my house hadn't burned down, and I unlocked the door and I walked inside, and like something was really wrong. Like I walked into my kitchen and I have those really adult compression rod curtains. So I had they were pulled down in the kitchen, all askew, and the curtain was sort of like all over the floor, and there were these muddy footprints on the ground, and muddy sort of streaks on the wall under the window, as if someone had gotten in with their muddy boots and then decided to climb back out the way they came and sort of like dragged their foot up the wall. So I was like, okay, definitely got broken into. That wasn't surprising. And then what was weird about it was the wind, like it was the summer, so I had left the windows open, but the screens were down, and the screen was still in place. So I was like, oh, this robber must have been particularly good, because not only did he or she get in, but without breaking through the screen, but then they had also put the screen back perfectly. And so I called my landlord, and she's sort of this older woman, and she told me she was napping with her husband, but for this circumstance, she would be right over. She would interrupt her nap. So they came over to investigate the situation, which for them involved walking around the property and looking for footprints, and also potentially maybe like DNA evidence. I wasn't really sure what they were looking for, but they did determine that the screen, this was a new discovery for them, that the screens, you could just open them from the outside. So so that was good to know at that point. And what she said to me, she came to me and she said, you know what, I'm really sorry this happened. I'm pretty sure this was the kids that just moved in upstairs. So there was this family with 5 kids that had just moved in upstairs, and she was kind of distraught. She was like, I kind of knew this might happen. I was worried about this. Why did I rent to a family with 5 kids? Good question. So she was like, you know, do you want me to talk to them, or do you want to talk to them? And I said, well, I'll talk to them. I'll talk to them, but you know, it'll just be between us, so we can just sort of deal with it interpersonally. So I called the mom, and she said that she would ask her kids if they broke into my house. So I was like, okay, great. Then she calls me back, and she says, well, I asked them, and they said they didn't do it. and I said, oh, okay. And she's like, and my kids don't lie. So and so I said, oh, okay. And on the phone, there's not much you can say in that moment, so I just sort of, we hung up, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, you know what? The truth is, there really was no harm. Like, I cleaned up the mud, but there was nothing gone from the house. Like, there was nothing missing that I could tell. Nothing of value had been taken. It just seemed to me like maybe these kids were sort of playing around. There are 5 of them. There's 4 boys, so I don't know. I've never had brothers, but I do know that boys can get a little rowdy. So I thought, maybe I can just let this go. I'm just going to let this go. So it's one of those things you tell yourself, okay, I'm just going to not think about this anymore. I'm just going to move on. And then, of course, for the next couple of days, it was all I was thinking about all the time. I need to adjust this. I decided to call her back and see if we could really get to the bottom of it. So I called back the mom and said, you know what, can we talk about this again? Because it's getting to a point where every time I leave the house, I'm like locking all the windows, I'm locking all the doors, it's really hot, I come home, it's really hot. And she said, okay, she would come down, she would talk to me that night. So she gets home from work, we sit down, I said, I really think it's your kids. And she said, well, I guess I'll talk to them again. And I said, okay. So she goes upstairs, and not only does she ask them if they did it, but she tells them that I run a security camera in my kitchen. It's just like, I don't know that I really wanted her kids to think like I run security cameras in my kitchen, but so if they wanted to confess, like now would be a good time. So they immediately break down and start sobbing. She parades them downstairs to my porch. It's pitch dark. The light is on. There's like bugs flying everywhere, and they can't even sort of get themselves to say any words. They're standing there looking at the floor sobbing. And finally they say they're sorry, and she parades them back upstairs, and I get apology cards from them. They bake me fresh bread. They bake me all these cookies. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling okay about it, and I thought I could move on after I just got some acknowledgement about what had happened, but I'm just like sitting there, and there's still this really big question in my mind, which is, why did they break into my house? Like, why? Like, I have an iPad. I have really cool speakers. It was pretty shiny. I have a couple cool cameras. I don't know how nerdy these kids are, but I have like great games in my house. Why didn't they take anything? And why were there only footsteps in the kitchen? Like, did they come in and then take off their boots and then like walk around in their socks, like looking through my closet? Like what was going on? I needed more information. And I'm just sitting there really distraught by this whole thing still. And then I get a text from my neighbor upstairs, the mom, and she says, you might want to change your Wi-Fi password. And it turned out that they could see through my window that I had a sticky note on the fridge that said Wi-Fi. And it said the password, and they had just moved in and didn't have internet yet, and they had been home alone and were desperate. So that's the story.
Thank you, Britta. Now, our next storyteller is Alan Haenel, who some of you may know. If you have children in the Hanover School District, you may know him as a high school English teacher at Hanover High. And actually, I have to, there's something I didn't tell you, Alan. We had to select the stories. We had several submissions. And I asked my daughter, do you know Mr. Haenel? He was your English teacher, right? Do you think he's a good storyteller? And she went, yes, you should have him tell a story. He's a great storyteller. So yes, but it's my daughter's recommendation. Mr. Haenel is a story about his childhood.
I was driving home from work a few days ago, and on NPR, I'm not sure if it was NHPR, but NPR, I was listening to an interview with Anthony Bourdain. And the interviewer asked him, what is the worst thing you ever had to eat on your travels? And Bourdain said that he went to Namibia, and there was this remote tribe that had just killed a warthog. And apparently the delicacy that the chief offered to Anthony Bourdain was the unwashed, uncooked anus of the warthog. And Bourdain said, I really don't have any choice. I don't want to offend the chief, so he went ahead and did the deed. Well, this reminded me of a story from when I was young, about 40 years ago. Now, for you to understand the impact this particular event had on me, I have to give you a little context. First off, I was a 17-year-old idiot. Now, it is not difficult for a 17-year-old boy to be an idiot. But there I was. I thought that I had the world measured, wrapped up, and stuck in my back pocket. I was president of my class of, what, Kathy, 180 or so at Hartford High School. I was a first chair all-state trumpet player. I had a girlfriend. And I had thick, beautiful, blonde hair. And I had combed and combed and combed until all the cowlicks were out of it. And my mother said, you know, baldness really runs in the men in the family, but yours is so thick, I think it's going to skip you. And I knew she was right. I just had the world figured out. It couldn't throw anything at me, but I'd be able to handle it. So one night, my girlfriend asked me to come over to her house to celebrate her mother's birthday party. Now, a little bit about my girlfriend's family. The word that comes to mind is simply normal. I mean, you couldn't get more stereotypically American middle class than this family. You had a mother, she was kind of roly-poly, she was very, very pleasant. And a dad, and you had some older sisters, and you had literally a white picket fence. I mean, it was just quaint. And in fact, I remember one time, my girlfriend said, you should go in and talk to my dad in the den. So I went in and I sat next to him. He's in his easy chair and he was watching golf on the TV. And I don't want to offend anybody who's into golf, but I just sort of came in and I was like, wow. I mean, you're watching golf. I was like, this is so mundane, you know? But the feeling was just that this is not in any way a dangerous man. So this whole event with my girlfriend's mother's birthday party was just like a Norman Rockwell type of event. You know, we had the all-American mashed potatoes and the all-American meatloaf and the all-American family all gathered around the table and laughter, and I just felt very, very comfortable and safe and wonderful. We had the birthday cake, and then we got near the end of the meal and things started to get a little odd because my girlfriend's mother got up from the table and she said, okay, I guess it's time. And then my girlfriend's father backed away from the table and he brought his chair back and he sat down and my girlfriend's mother came over and laid across his lap, face down. And she looks up at us, all gathered there, and she says, okay. And I turned to my girlfriend, I was like, what is going on? And my girlfriend said, now we're all going to spank my mother. Norman Rockwell turns into Salvador Dali. The clocks start melting, and familiar objects become macabre. I said, I'm not going to spank your mother. And she said, you have to. It's the tradition. We do this for everybody's birthday. Whoever's at the birthday party has to take a turn spanking the birthday girl. I said, but it's your mother. Now, I told a coworker of mine who couldn't be here tonight about the event. I said, this is the theme of the night, and this is the story I'm going to tell. And he said, oh, so what? Is this going to be an embarrassing moment or a guilty pleasure? One more little bit of context. I grew up Mormon. And while there is nothing in the Book of Mormon that says specifically, thou shalt not spank thy girlfriend's mother, I still felt there was something very wrong about this moment. So no, there was nothing pleasurable in the least, guilty or otherwise, about what was going on here. But my girlfriend was insistent. She said, you got to do it. I said, I'm not, please. No. She said, come on. And the next thing I know, I'm in line. Behind my girlfriend and her sisters and her sister's husband. And they're all gleefully just up there, you know, going at it. You know, no idea of the blasphemy they're committing. No idea of this adolescent Mormon soul just shriveling in the room. But there they go. And then I am standing in front of this altar of my girlfriend's mother's. So, I think it's part of the human condition that there are certain events in our lives where we so want to memorize the sensory experience of what's happening. Like that first kiss, or the first time we hold our child. And then there are other moments when we so want to forget the sensory moment, and we can't. This hand cannot unremember the sensation of my girlfriend's mother's bottom. I won't go into detail. Suffice to say, it involves the feeling of polyester and jiggling. But I didn't feel that I could offend my hosts, so I did the deed. Now, forgive me, I'm an English teacher, so I like my stories to have some kind of a point. So I offer you this. If you want to feel your world exploding, if you want to remember that the universe is a large and frightening place, you don't have to go to Namibia. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. And I hope people are starting to feel inspired with their own awkward stories or guilty pleasures. I think almost every story has some awkward moments. So just interpret the theme freely, flexibly. Our next storyteller, the last storyteller before the break, is Cindy Pierce, who is hiding there in the middle. I hope you can make your way out. Cindy is a professional storyteller. She's also an innkeeper in Etna, the Pierce Inn. And I witnessed her win the Moth's Story Slam. No, it was not the Story Slam, or was it the Story Slam? Well, she did. She's a Moth storyteller telling winner. So please welcome Cindy.
What's the system here? That looked like it was the way to go. Oh, I got it, I think. I got it. Mr. Hanel. Like, my kids have had Mr. Hanel. That's funny. I'm still like, you got to tell that in school. That's a good one. So embarrassing moments are all I'm about. That's like, I just can't help myself from the get-go. I'm now 52. I always say to people I've been on the planet for a deck of cards, and it looks like I'm heading out with more embarrassing things every day. In fact, so many embarrassing things happen to me that they don't even strike as embarrassing. In the midst, it used to be like something would happen, I would be cringing, and as time would go on, I'd say, you know what, there is some humor in that, and I could sort it out. Then it got to the point where it would happen, and right away I'd be like, okay, this is gonna be pretty funny when I tell my friends. Now things start happening, and I'm halfway in, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is gonna be good. It's bad and good all at once. So I'm just constant. So trying to find embarrassing moments, it's just you gotta kind of look at each day of my life. But one thing that kind of has become a theme is, for me, I'm kind of a low maintenance gal. Like, I keep the bar low in fashion. Like, these are my lady clothes right here. And getting dressed up is a bit of a challenge. Like, it takes a lot of concentration. It really takes planning. And, you know, when you got to dress up, it's like, whew. And I'm not going to really dress up. I go for the minimal. I consider myself, when I go to a wedding or an event, I'm like the public service. Everyone can look at me and say, oh my goodness, thank goodness she's here, because I was worried about my outfit. So I'm really like, I'm aiming low here, right? And so I remember but finding dresses that I can move in have been difficult. So I remember when I was a senior in college, I had 3 black tie events to attend in 1 year. What is a senior in college who basically runs around in her sneakers? You know, I'm like, I need one dress to rock all these events. So, you know, it's the 80s, and I head down to Filene's, and my hard-earned money, I'm like, I'm gonna get one dress, and this is gonna roll. So I go in, and you know, the 80s, and I find this dress that I think I can do. And of course, it's got like, you know, puffy and like velvet and flammable crap that just jetted out and all that. I mean, you don't want to, like the 80s, the whole section, if anyone lit up a cigarette, it would just go pfft. So I try on this dress. It was too big, though they didn't have my size, but they said we could alter it. I'm like, bonus, I'll pick it up on my way to Boston. So they take 45 minutes, and I said, look, people, I want to be clear. I need room. I eat meals. I eat them, all of them. So I need room to expand. So they pin me, measure nipple to armpit, everywhere. And I'm standing there, a little ADHD, like working through it. Finally, the dress, and they've got room. And I said, I'll pick it up on the way. 2 weeks later, I swing by the mall, try on the dress. Little snug. I had not changed. They were trying to help me out, like a lot of people do. So I'm like, whoa, okay, this is fitted, but I don't have a choice because I'm going to that party. Whip down to Boston, Copley Square parking garage. I don't have time to go find a place. I'm gonna change right there. I got my dad's old Toyota little truck. I am like, and back then we had stockings. I'm like getting myself in the stockings, and I get in there, wheedle my way into these heels, get on this like situation, pull someone over to zip me up. I'm like, perfect. And then like this meal at this ball was like a 5-course meal. It was endless. And all of a sudden by the 4th I'm like, I'm trying to breathe it down. Like, I am maxed out in this dress. Like my tits are climbing up my neck. My breath is impaired. I'm like, oh boy, I gotta go walk this off. So I travel around this place, the hotel. I'm like, breathe it down. And then the dancing begins. And I'm like, yes, here we go. And I'm pretty enthusiastic. Now, I also should remind you of these 3 little dress stories that I don't drink a drop of alcohol. So all of my antics, sadly, have no excuse but my own gusto, right? So I like dance up a storm, the lights are low, dance all night. End of the night, the lights come on, and all the people around me in Boston are like, they're staring at me. I'm like, what? And they're backing away. I'm like a repellent on the dance floor. And then I can see out of the corner of my eyes, like my hair, like strands of hair are sticking out. And I look over, and I have blown the shoulders out of this dress. And I look down, and the velvet is like crimped to them. It's maxed out. Luckily, I had a really good zipper that had some integrity, because I was gonna blow this thing apart. My stockings are shredded. I look like the Incredible Hulk, like the next day, So then I'm a little sad, because I needed that dress. I had 2 more events. I'm bumming, right? And my sister has like her rehearsal dinner, black tie. I'm like, oh God, help me. So I start to get a little sad, and I go to the mall and I say, this dress really didn't hold up. And they said, we will give you a new one. So they gave me a credit, and I decided I need room, right? So I bought a different 80s version, which was like a loose top, but it had this bare back, which required some bra situation that was beyond they offered me a bra that wrapped about 100 ways to hold the jugs in place. I'm like, no, I can't do that bra. I cannot wear that bra. And they said, well, your other option is you get these cups with a glue stick, and you can stick them on. Game on, baby. That looked good. So I get these things, and it's the night of the event. Now, the bottom part of the dress was a little fitted, not really fitted for a normal person, but just like not that big wide space. But up here, I had room to really give it a go. So I go to put the glue on, and when I opened the glue, I was like, it was so toxic, but I threw that stuff on, stuck those things on, and once you stick them, you're there for the night, right? But I had done them at a slight angle. Like, come on. Like, when am I gonna grow up? Okay, when? Still haven't gotten there. So I'm like, gotta go with it. Luckily, I am the maid of honor, but I'm just background material because it's the bride's situation. So perfect. So I go out there with like boobs in 2 directions, get through that. Halfway through the night, the glue unsticks on one of them, and it's like floating. So I had to go braless, which I don't like. I like containment, I like support. So it was just, this is so bad. So I get to the end of the night, and I've survived, but someone informs me that the slit on the back of the thing has gone all the way up above my ass crack. But luckily I had a black slip. Like, okay, so now I have new rules. Like, so after that, it's like, okay, people, this is how you shop. Like, I got a new way. And the thing is, when women like me go into a lady store, in those nice stores, they give you a look like this, like, don't waste your time, dearie. I don't think you really belong here. And when I'm in New York or LA, I don't pretend I'm from those places. I wear my sneakers, my Patriots baseball cap, my linty fleece, and with wood chips and like lint and chicken stuff on it. Like in my jeans. I'm not gonna go in and pretend I'm something else. And I go in and I lay it down, right? I lay down my rules. I say, here's what I'm looking for. Can you help me? And if they really aren't friendly, I will shop somewhere else. Because sometimes I have to go to these events. A few years ago, I had to go to a wedding at this totally fancy place with 4 events. 4, that's torture. So I'm like, all right, I gotta go. So I go into the store. I said I was gonna get the one for the wedding. That's the part I'm gonna focus on for the dress. And I go in. They give me the look. They shoo me over to their lowest level person, like, oh, can't be bothered with this little scrappy situation. So I say, here's the deal. Going to an event, I can't even worry about money at this point. I need a dress that can work with my body, okay? I'm built like a brick shithouse here, let's just be clear. And here's some things, like I have 3 criteria. I eat the food, all the food, and I need room to expand. Number 2, I dance with serious enthusiasm. The shoulders will be going, legs are gonna be moving, I am gonna be going. That dress needs to go with me. Thirdly, I need a dress that I can climb a fence in. Okay? And here's the thing, I'm talking about a high fence, like a chain link tennis court fence. I need to be able to tuck that dress in my underwear and get over that thing. All right? Like, now the woman is like this. She's kind of excited. She's like, oh my God. So she goes around the store and she collects these dresses and she brings them over, and I try on a few, and like old Stumpy, I'm like, I got scars from knee surgeries. It's like, you know, this is a lot. Maybe not this one and not that one. And the last one was just heinous, ugly. Absolutely an ugly dress. And she said, you got to try it on. I'm like, you know, the bar's low, but that dress doesn't inspire. I got to. She goes, no, just put it on. I'm like, it's kind of ugly and expensive. And I don't know. I don't know. She goes, put it on. And I'm like, okay. So I go in there and I put this dress on. And the minute it lands on my body, I am like, oh my word. I am naked. I am naked and dressed for a black tie event. I can overlook ugly, I think. But I got to think about the finances. And so I take it off. I say, can you hold it? And I'll be back in a few hours. I just have to like digest this idea. And she goes, let me show you one thing. She takes that dress, crumples it into a ball the size of a grapefruit, and then goes like this. Poof, shakes out. She goes, you don't have to iron it. Boom, sold to the lady in the sneakers and the wood chip covered fleece. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Cindy. That's hard to top that story. But people, we are serious. We need a story from the audience. So I'm looking at you very seriously. Who is considering telling a story up here? Just make eye contact. Yes? Because, you know, oh yeah, I see some fingers pointing. Yes, okay, good. So after the break, start getting ready. Put your name in the basket there. And if we don't get volunteers, we'll just randomly pull someone from the audience. And you know what? Well, just to make you feel a little bit, I'll share my own embarrassment from this morning. So I was sitting at Umpleby, trying to get some work. Umpleby's the coffee shop in Hanover. Trying to get some work done, writing on my laptop, and this group of young people comes in and sit at the table next to me. I had this very nice, quiet corner, and they take the extra empty chairs from my table, which, okay, was fine. They deserved that. They were more than me by myself. And it was these obnoxious young people, these successful, probably Dartmouth grads, you know, these very young people who are probably making like $100,000, $200,000 salaries in their first jobs. And they were talking about money. It was beyond me. I don't know anything about money. I think they were like on Wall Street, and I was just giving them the stink eye. And they were talking and talking. I was trying to focus on my work. And they were like, for 20 minutes, I was like glaring at them and making it clear that I despised their values, whatever they were. I didn't know anything about them. And I'm a bit prejudiced. It's probably my own insecurities because, I mean, these successful young people, and here I am, this fat-filled old person. No, anyway, so I'm just taking out everything on him, and I'm just glaring at him. And then my husband comes in, meeting me at the coffee shop, and he asks me, "What's going on with your face?" I was drinking a hot chocolate. What's going on in my face? I look at my mirror. It turns out, for 20 minutes, I'd been glaring at them with like a clown chocolate face. So, please share your embarrassing moments. Great, it's an intermission.
Yeah. We'll take a very short intermission, about 15 minutes, and we'll hear some more stories. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Without further ado,
We did.
You did, we did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so is it Peter?
it is Peter. Yes.
You're up.
Turn.
So. Okay, so you know that the musician he'll give you after about 7 minutes.
It won't be that long, believe me.
Okay, great. All right.
Yeah, talk about embarrassing moments. This is it. Thank you. Now, I should have a lot of embarrassing moments. I have two sisters. And one is a twin. She's sitting right over there. But anyhow, back when I was in college, I went to Plymouth State College, not Plymouth State University, what it is now. PSC or PSU? You know, what do you have on your on your sweatshirt? PSU. It just doesn't. It's not nice. It sounds like it might be sticky. You know, you gotta watch out for that. Anyhow, I had a couple of buddies of mine from Hanover that were working at Camp Wyota up on Lake Maury as handy boys, which meant they had to do all this really crummy work. But we used to sing together. We did covers of exciting groups like the Kingston Trio. Remember Tom Dooley? How many people remember Tom Dooley? Oh, bless you. That's sweet. And we used to actually put on some music for the kids at the camp. It was a girls' camp, by the way. And there was a young lady there named Nancy Becker that I thought was just wonderful. And I found out that she was going to be leaving that next weekend to go back to Oberlin to be a music major. And I would have given anything to be able to give her just one kiss. This is how innocent the days of innocence were. Picture this, it's maybe 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, about 10 o'clock at night, it's dark, the moon is out. Lake Maury is sitting there, bathed in this beautiful fog coming in, which was illuminated and kind of exaggerated by the moonlight. There was the sparkle of dew on the grass. And I went up to Nancy, and I took her in my arms. And the next thing I knew, I was looking up at the sky with Nancy saying, "Peter, Peter, get up, Peter, Peter, Peter." I had slipped on a mossy rock, hit a moss-covered rock on my knee, which apparently has what they call a pressure point, and knocked myself out cold. And that's my embarrassing story.
Our next storyteller, we're very lucky to have Pat Spaulding. She's a professional storyteller all the way from Rye. Came just to tell us a story tonight. Pat, how are you? Okay, Pat, take it away. That's it.
Okay, I need to get this a little lower because I need to see you and it's making me cross-eyed. How do I do it? I need help. Just, because I don't, okay, that looks pretty good. Yeah, I can see that. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. It was the 80s. Pre-moth. I was in my early 30s, and I started writing and telling first-person experience stories to adults because I didn't know any better. I thought I should be married around that time of my life, but it wasn't working out. I couldn't figure out how to do it or who to marry. My mother said, when you know, I mean, you will know when the right guy comes along. I believed her. So I kept looking in all the wrong places. And I met a much younger, macho, cowboy type of guy. I knew he was trouble, but that's just one of the things I liked about him. I liked his stance. It was solid, you know, that legs apart. He was present. When he was there, he was there. And when he smiled, his eyes crinkled up on the edges, just like Roy Rogers. When I was 5 years old and watching Roy Rogers gallop across my TV screen, I was in love at that time, and this guy held the same appeal. So I just let my imagination and the rest of me ride away with him on a hedonistic romp that lasted for about 6 wild months. No regrets. It was never meant to last, and I got a story out of it. I titled the story Ram Dodge. It wasn't his real name, but it suited him. And other women identified, and I got a little bit of local notoriety in the Seacoast for it for a short amount of time. I ended the story, happy trails to you until we meet again. Because I was never quite over this guy. Okay, you know where the story's going now. Fast forward. A decade, another one, another. 30 years later, I'm in my early 60s, coming off an unsatisfactory marriage. I had not been napping with my husband for quite some time. One of those older women who didn't take naps. There had been no action in my down there department for years. My hormones, or lack thereof, had stopped calling for any. Little V had pulled down the shades and was closed for business. That was that. Or so I thought. Then about 6 months after my divorce was final, I got an email from the old boyfriend, not nearly as old as I am, and not really a boyfriend, more like a boy toy who was in charge of his playmate. I could never claim to be in control of this relationship, or even if you could call it a relationship. All I know for sure is that he excited me, and he was trouble. So, when the flirty, fun emails began again, I flirted back. He was separated, on his way to his second divorce, seemed to have a pretty good command of the English language, could be playful with words, claimed he wanted to get to know me again, as if we'd ever really known each other in the first place. Then one night, I'm drinking my glass of Pinot Grigio, looking at my refrigerator, trying to figure out what to pull out of there for my solitary supper, when the phone rang. He was at Market Basket. Was now a good time to come over? Well, I had makeup on. What I was wearing was presentable. I'd taken a shower that morning, been working out at Planet Fitness for 6 months, and there was time to floss my teeth. Yeah, now it's fine. 5 minutes later, I hear the sound of a Harley engine get louder and louder and louder as it comes down my street, then slows to a low rumble to pull into my driveway. I peered out my window and saw him sling his leg over this cherry red machine like he was climbing off a horse. He took off his helmet. He was bald. That didn't matter. Slipped his Ray-Bans into the pocket of his leather jacket, strolled up to my door, and smiled that familiar smile with those crinkly eyes. Trouble was back. Black leather gloves, zippers, buckles, belts, and studs, chaps, jeans, and boots. Standing in my kitchen. I poured him a glass of wine, poured another one for myself, and guided him to the living room where he sat on the couch. Everything in my body wanted to just kind of snuggle right up there against him, but I resisted. It had been 30 years after all. So I sat in a chair opposite, and that was good because I could get a better read on his teeth. If you haven't seen somebody for 30 years, it's good to know how they've been taking care of their teeth. Couldn't really tell by all the facial hair, but didn't see any real problems. We talked for a couple hours, finished the bottle of wine, and then he said, well, better be going. Tomorrow's a working day. It's only 9:30. Yeah, better mosey, I guess. He smiled at my use of the word mosey. Or maybe it was the hesitation in my voice when I said, I guess. I followed him out to the Harley. He said, you want to sit on it? How did he know? So I approached that big cherry hunk of metal side saddle. Like a girl, he told me. Well, I didn't mind looking like a girl. I just didn't want to look like a granny. So I hoisted my leg up and over to straddle that hunk of power and sat in the saddle. Grabbed those chrome handlebars and just found myself bouncing up and down a little bit. Really trying hard not to break out into happy trails to you, but saying innocuous things to keep this all in place because the body remembers. Then I climbed off the motorcycle. He gave me a hug and a friendly kiss and rode away until we meet again. We had met again. Just like I'd said in the story that I wrote and told 30 years ago. Write it down, make it happen. Life imitates art. My Kundalini energy had been shaken and stirred. Not knowing exactly what else to do, I just jumped up and down in my driveway for several pleasant moments until I returned into my house and realized that little V had pulled up the shades, was peering out the window, and was wondering if we were open for business again. The next day, I made an appointment with my gynecologist and my psychotherapist. Amazingly, my gynecologist had a cancellation, so I went in to go over the basics of what if. And she said, all right, there's a virus out there that's rampant, HPV, human papillomavirus, but there's a vaccine. If you're gonna go out there again, I strongly suggest you get vaccinated. One of my patients, after her divorce, first guy, first time, bingo, got the virus. This is not the type of bingo I was expecting to play during my retirement years. She went on to say, and I'm going to write you a prescription for Vagifem suppositories to beef up those dry, thinning tissues. You're going to want to start taking them 3 weeks, once a day, before any intimate relations. Well, how am I supposed to know that? It's all speculation here. Do the best you can, and don't forget the lubricated condoms. Okay, good luck. Off I went to my psychotherapist, who quickly came up with his basic profile. Another narcissist. Why? Well, it's familiar. The history. You know, besides that, do you know how difficult it is to get attracted to somebody my age? They look like my uncles. Yeah, I know, I look like their aunts. But this guy, I knew him 30 years ago, and he looks the same, like he did 30 years ago. Well, I know he's bald now, but I don't see him that way because I see him the way I saw him 30 years ago, and that's the way he sees me, too. And that's why everybody's getting together now with Facebook and emails with their high school boyfriend or their college sweetheart, because we don't see each other as we are. We see each other as we were, and we feel those same feelings. Like when I write him an email, before I do it, I want to shave my legs. You what? Oh, never mind. Getting nowhere with me by dishing out practical advice, my therapist brought out the big guns. AIDS has a 10-year gestation period. You will be sleeping with his whole sexual history. You haven't known the guy for 30 years. Do you trust that he isn't a sleazy man? Oh. By the time I left her office, little V had pulled down the shades and was closed for business. That was that. Well, that was that for that day. But 3 weeks from that day, with the right suppository supplements, vaccinations, exercise, don't forget the lubricated condoms, who knows? The future is cherry red and ripe with possibility. Who knows? Everything that's old is new again. Who knows?
Thank you, Pat. You know, I have to tell you, I love this event so much. I think there's nothing that connects us quite like stories. This next story, Aaron Osofsky. Aaron, if I butchered that, I apologize. He's a dentist here in Lebanon, New Hampshire, and he has a wonderful tale to tell. Aaron?
Hello? Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. So my name is Aaron Osofsky. Oh, my name is Aaron Osofsky, and standing here before you today is a guilty pleasure. Prior to September 3rd of this year, prior to September 3rd of this year, it just wasn't possible. I begin the story in Hanover, New Hampshire, where my wife Miriam and I raised our 2 boys, Sam and Daniel, to adulthood. I'm standing in my kitchen on a Sunday morning trying to make eggs for breakfast when I realize it's been a long time since I've seen my son Sam. And I think, oh shit, it's been too long since I've seen Sam, and he's upstairs and he's alone. So I turn off the stove and push over the pan and throw down my spatula and bolt up the stairs, and I find him flushing the nightlight down the toilet. You heard me correctly. My 21-year-old adult child is flushing the nightlight down the toilet. And I put my hands on his shoulders, and I look deep into his warm brown eyes, and I ask him in an even and non-judgmental tone, I say, "Sam, are you trying to flush that nightlight down the toilet?" And he nods yes and turns away. Let me explain. Sam is disabled, and he's not a little disabled. He's profoundly disabled and with multiple disabilities. And it's not obvious at first glance. With his olive skin and straight black hair and beautiful smile, he's handsome and looks a lot like the other young adults his age. But he can't talk or add or spell or read or do the fine motor things you'd expect someone to do, like build things or handwriting. Sam expresses himself with sign language that my wife and I learned and then taught him as a baby. When Sam's signing got good enough as a small boy, he signed, "My voice is broken." And we all cried because we knew that Sam was smart enough to understand his disability. And we all grieved because we knew that without a voice, that Sam could not make friends with the other kids in school. So we placed him into deaf schools where people could understand him, and so he wouldn't feel so isolated in the world. My wife and I were determined to nurture his spirit so he would be able to endure his disabilities, and in many ways we were successful. We've spent a lifetime trying to make the world better for Sam and Sam better for the world. We spent literally thousands of hours fighting with the school district and insurance companies over the last 21 years for services they were legally mandated to provide, but reluctant to do so. When Sam is at his best, he exudes this infectious joie de vivre that makes everyone around him more alive. He giggles and laughs when I chase him around the house, pretending to be a robot, like the histrionic robot from Lost in Space, "Danger, Will Robinson," or Nick Park's robotic trousers. What. Sam gets all jazzed up and signs "stop" and away, where he vocalizes, "Aho." One of the few words he can make with his voice, and one that did not make him popular among school administrators. And then he takes an imaginary remote control, and he turns me off, and I collapse, like a Pac-Man when he's been eaten. Woo! And then I wake up. Woo! And he pushes me in the bathroom and slams the door, and I can hear him slipping away, snickering. And that's when I escape and find him, and I give him hugs and kisses, because that's when he's most delicious and when I love him the most. But raising Sam wasn't always so joyful. My family spent the last decade listening to Pac-Man and Mario Kart theme music, drowning out all peacefulness that could have been in our home, with the help of YouTube bouncy house videos coming from Sam's computer in the other room. My younger son Daniel is 19 and a half years old. He left for Wesleyan University a year and a half ago to create a life that he loves, and undoubtedly to escape the cacophony that was in our great room. Sam, on the other hand, would have lived with us forever, but that just wasn't possible. His behavior had gone terribly wrong, and it wasn't his fault. It started in the last 6 months at Sam's deaf school. In my personal opinion, they broke his spirit and they ruined his behavior with a lousy behavior plan that we told them would fail, but they refused to change. After 5 days and nights at school, he would come home for the weekend, and he would bang his toys and computers, and he would spit from anxiety. And he would laugh and cry in the same breath and stamp his feet and slam doors. Sam towers over my wife, and sometimes he would scratch her or spit in her face or knock over tables and chairs or throw things at us. Sam had become dangerous to himself and to us and to others. So we had to take him out of school before graduation so we could fix his behavior and repair his spirit in the 3 summer months that remained before he became an adult. Now, at the age of 21, young adults like Sam moved from the school system to state adult services. And in a heavily documented needs test provided by the state, it was determined that Sam needed 2 adults working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 2-on-1, and a third provider giving those providers 30 hours of respite just for him to get what he needed to be safe. My wife and I just couldn't provide that, me working full-time as a dentist and she as a psychologist. And trying to provide that kind of care over the years had caused both of us to have this fiery heartburn that even medication couldn't fix. And for me, high blood pressure too. So Sam had to leave the home so that he could get the services he needed and so that my wife and I could live and be healthy. We found a program for him in Hooksett, New Hampshire. And to help Sam with the transition, we duplicated his home in the apartment in Hooksett, New Hampshire, from his computer that launched directly to YouTube, to his musical ball popper, to his large stuffed animal dogs. We copied it all. And we brought his future providers into our home for hundreds of hours during the summer to teach him Sam's behavior plan and sign language. And we also took Sam on these carefully planned trips to Hooksett, New Hampshire, so we could get used to it a little bit at a time. And while we did all these things during the summer, we discovered that Sam wasn't sleeping at night, that he stayed awake almost every minute of every day for a whole week in a never-ending 3-week cycle. And we didn't know whether the lack of sleep was causing the behavior problem or the behavior problem somehow made the lack of sleep. But either way, to keep him safe, we had to lock him in the house. So we turned our door locks backwards and we locked him in. And we put a wooden rod on our sliding glass door and a padlock on our front door, and we locked Daniel's room and the garage and the basement. And we pre-flushed our toilets and turned off the water at night so we couldn't flood the house. And we unplugged the microwave so we couldn't throw things in and set the house on fire. And we called this Sam-proofing the house, and we did it every night. And we got good at it, but we weren't perfect. So on Tuesday, August 29th, 5 days before Sam's birthday, Miriam forgot to put the padlock on the front door. And unbeknownst to us, Sam disappeared into the night. He returned to our home with a firefighter and 3 police officers. And they told us that Sam had set off a fire alarm in a commercial building 2 blocks away. And I'm pretty sure it was the one that Sam had been eyeing all summer, the little red one in the elevator, and that it just called out to him and he couldn't control himself. And I imagine that when the first responders came, that he couldn't answer any of their questions, at least not with his voice. And so we brought them back by foot in the dark to our home. It was a few days later, on September 3rd, on the morning of Sam's 21st birthday, that Sam became an adult. And that was the morning he flushed the nightlight down the toilet. Sam knew he was going to go to Hooksett that day, and he was angry, and he really wanted to stick it to me. He was fearful that the new place would be like his school dorm, and he felt betrayed that we would send him away from home, his guaranteed safe place, to someplace else where he might struggle. But we still managed to get ourselves into the back of a silver Subaru Outback and make the 90-minute trip south to Hooksett. And Sam thrashed and spit and acted out, and it was because he was terrified. But a few weeks later, he's adjusted, he's doing okay. We still don't know why he doesn't sleep at night, but he's happy, and his behavior is good. And I've begun to adjust too. I have time to do things I haven't done in a long time, like write the story, or sleep at night, or take a bath, or cut my nails, or even have sex with my wife. All of these things are my guilty pleasures because I know in the back of my mind that Sam would be happier at home. And as I enjoy all these things, I still feel a pang of guilt for kicking him out. Thank you.